Hello, everybody. This is your main man, Teddy T. I want to spend a few minutes with you discussing some issues surrounding some current events in the news concerning Donald Trump and Michael Cohen. I just discovered today, it's May 3rd, 2018. I just discovered today that Mr. Trump has now confided or confessed through Mr. Giuliani, newest member of his legal team, that he is in fact aware of the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. Why is this significant, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you this. It's significant because number of things. Number one, initially Donald Trump says that he knew nothing about this payment, didn't know who Stormy Daniels was. He says if you want to answer questions about that, you have to talk to Michael Cohen. Well, Michael Cohen has his issues. He actually went in front of a federal judge in New York, this Judge Wood, and told her that he had gotten this home equity loan for $130,000. He paid Stormy Daniels in this non-disclosure agreement, and that Mr. Trump was not aware of it, that he made this decision on his own. Well, he's got a problem. Because the FBI is sniffing around this whole thing due to the fact that Mr. Cohen alleges that he took this home equity loan out for $130,000. So I want you to think about that for a second. What lawyer do you know that could go and take out a loan for $130,000, pay off a client, be financially responsible for this loan and not be reimbursed, and just go on like life is okay and so the FBI is sniffing because they want to say that they think that there's something illegal about this, and it may be anything ranging from racketeering to money laundering to influence peddling, etc. So you have to look up those terms to figure out what all this means. I'll break it down for you. The financial transactions of $10,000 or more has to be reported on a disclosure form to the Treasury. And what that does is Treasury will then investigate that transaction. And mostly they're looking for money laundering, because that's usually how certain groups have been laundering money through banks. And even through car dealerships, they have been laundering money by paying cash for vehicles and things like that. So they require that you disclose the source of the funds. Now, there was a certain former Speaker of the House who was jammed up on several $100,000 in withdrawals that he disclosed, but not for the purpose that it was disclosed upon. And once an investigation was done, it was determined that this gentleman had violated certain laws concerning financial transactions. Okay. What does this mean? Well, break it down for you. What it means is that Mr. Trump and Mr. Cohen have a problem. There's two sides and to the story. And people always say, well, there's two sides to a story, and usually it's somewhere in between the two that the truth lies. Okay. So in the one version we have from Mr. Trump, we'll take him first. So in Mr. Trump's version of events, he doesn't know anything about Stormy Daniels, doesn't know anything about an affair, never paid her any money, doesn't know why Cohen did it. If you want to know, you got to ask Cohen. That's his story. I'm sticking to it. Okay. Mr. Cohen says on the other hand, yes, I took out this home equity loan for $130,000. I paid Miss Stormy Daniels. It was a non-disclosure agreement. It was between us and the LLC. Hold on. But he never alleged that she had and she never alleged that she had an affair with Michael Cohen. So, and who is this LLC? Well, could be Cohen's LLC, could be a front LLC, could be a sham, basically front sham. I don't know. But it's interesting that it was disclosed to him that, yes, there is a NDA, non-disclosure agreement, with your alias name, Mr. Trump, your alias name, Dennis something or another, that the alias they use. It's common practice, folks, for rich folks, wealthy people, celebrities, people of means, to have these agreements. Even Mr. Cosby had one, but it was the deposition had been, the agreement and the deposition had been sealed, but once he admitted that he had did the things with the Quaaludes and things like that, his deposition was unsealed and it became known. I don't know if they used a fake name or not, but it was disclosed that he had paid this woman $3.4 million, I believe it was, to not disclose this information. Okay. So there's nothing unusual about it that he had a non-disclosure agreement, but what's unusual is that it wasn't signed by him. And every legal document that I've ever seen that has a line with your name underneath it requires your signature. Now, these lawyers try to bat around this nonsense about a third-party beneficiary. That in and of itself is not necessarily untrue, because there is such a thing as third-party beneficiaries. And it probably, they were trying to peddle this, saying that, well, in reality, we all know that Donald Trump actually did have an affair with this woman, and that's why his name was included on it, and he's the third-party beneficiary, but I'm going to say that I'm standing in for him, and I'm going to assume the role of the initial party that had standing in order to make this agreement. Well, I think the FBI and I think this federal judge in New York is not buying that story. And I think that once all this is done, because they're now saying that Stormy Daniels is going to have to pay millions of dollars because of her interview with 60 Minutes. I say nonsense. She will not. The reason being is, and Avenatti has a very good point. And let me tell you about Avenatti. Michael Avenatti, who is Stormy Daniels' lawyer, is a very sharp lawyer. I have not seen anyone so sharp that crosses his T's and dots his I's like this guy. He is sharp. What does it mean? Well, what it means is that they got a problem, a serious problem. This non-disclosure agreement is going to be shredded by this judge in New York. When it comes time for the deposition, it's going to be shredded. Stormy Daniels, in effect, will be reining in millions and not paying out millions. That's a safe bet, folks. That's a bet that even Vegas would take, because she's in driver's seat. Because they're going to say, hey, listen, yeah, she got the 130, so it should be valid. But what makes agreements invalid no matter what is when it's not signed. And you can throw about all the legalese you want. If it's not signed, it's not valid. Period. Okay. Some of these lawyers that's involved in this case, I'm a little bit baffled by, because these guys, and the biggest one is Cohen. I'm baffled by some things that he said, some things that he's done. The thing is that as a lawyer, and I didn't even go to law school, but I've studied a lot of law books, and one of the things that they tell you And this is the thing that they went after McCabe about, was candor or lack thereof. Candor is being candid. That's exactly what it means, being candid, being truthful. You can be jammed up real bad on lack of candor. Even the Bar Association can censor you for that. Good lawyer knows that. So here we are. But Cohen has been less than forthcoming with accurate and truthful information. So I think he's got a serious problem, not only with the federal court system, but with the FBI, with DOJ. They are on his case. So he has a problem. Now, here's what's the real problem. What is he going to say? What is he going to really say when they tell him all the years that he's getting ready to get in this case? What's he going to say? Is he going to bite the bullet, as everyone keeps saying, and say, well, Trump's my man and I'm going to stand by him and I'm going to fall on my sword? No. When he's looking at potentially 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years in prison, what is he going to say? What is he going to do? Tell you. Because people are going to say, well, you don't know what he's going to do. You're not in his mind. I'm going to tell you what he's going to do. He's going to say, what's my losses? Where am I? Here. What's my losses? And his losses are going to be his family, which he cares about dearly, his family, his wife, and his daughters. This man is going to tell everything that he knows to the FBI. The funny part was, this was in Mueller's lap, and he fast forwarded it to the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, I'm going to tell you another reason why this is important. Mueller would not have wasted his time with this if it was nonsense. He is very, very busy. He has a lot to do in this case. He does not have time for nonsense. So when this stuff landed in his lap through Trump and Cohen running their big fat mouths on TV, Mueller said, this is not in my purview, but I think that there's something here. Y'all need to look into it. And subsequently, I just found out today that there was a wiretap on Cohen's phone. And in that wiretap, the FBI, and I'm emphasizing this because it's important, but the FBI recorded a conversation between Cohen and the White House. Cohen in the White House. And we can all take an educated guess as to who that was in the White House. We can take a guess. Could be anybody, but we know who it was. So, why is this important? It's important because you don't just get a wiretap because you do a fancy dance in front of a judge and you're a good hula dancer. No, you have to have some proof of criminal activity to get a wiretap. You have to have proof. So they got it. They got the wiretap. So there's proof that something's going on. They don't know what yet, but they need the conversations to figure out what's going on. So they got something. From that wiretap, they were able to get another warrant to raid Cohen's offices, home, hotel room. What's that tell you? That tells you that there's something there. Okay? But this is a witch hunt, according to everyone else. Lo and behold, today, again, Mr. Giuliani on Fox and Friends, actually this happened yesterday, but on Fox and Friends, a friendly news outlet to President Trump, they asked these questions, and Giuliani says, well, now Mr. Trump knows about the 130. He kind of knew some of the details, but not the specifics. but he knew something was going on with this Stormy Daniels situation, and he wasn't totally aware of all of the facts, but he was aware that the 130 was paid. He was aware that it was funneled through to this lawyer. Funneled through. Okay, I'm going to take that one. Reality here, folks. Trump and Cohen have serious legal issues to deal with. Cohen more so because he was labeled as the fixer, not necessarily an attorney, even though he is a registered bar attorney. I believe he is registered in New York and D.C. If I'm not mistaken, I can look into that, but I'm pretty sure it's D.C. and New York. Could be just New York, but I'm pretty sure it's both. Anyway, doesn't matter. What matters is Trump continues to defame Stormy Daniels, and they again debate the issue of whether it's really defamation, but it all hinges on whatever comes out in the investigation. And Avenatti, Ms. Daniels' attorney, is very confident, as am I, that when all of this shakes out, they're going to prove their case. And they can't wait to depose him. But the judge put it on hold because she wants to know more about Cohen and what's going on with Cohen. And he is definitely in some serious trouble in New York because this judge, her name is Kimba Wood. She is a well-respected jurist from New York on that federal court in New York. U.S. District Judge Kimba Wood. Check her out. She's got a hell of a resume. I'm going to tell you this. This stuff is going to blow up. Now, I'm going to chronologically go through this for you just for 1 second. Bob Mueller has gone after the low-hanging fruit, as they call it, and is going to go all the way up that tree to the top. What's this mean? Well, he systematically and methodically is taking this corruption apart. And he started off with Paul Manafort, with Richard Gates, which this guy Papadopoulos, Michael Flynn. These are the four major players that he started out with. Why is that important? Because he's going up the ladder. It's going to get these folks. I hate to say this, but it's really insulting to look at these news stories when they are talking about this stuff because they're trying to play on people's intelligence, and it's really annoying. What do I mean by that? You're telling the American people that this is a witch hunt, that, there's nothing there was no collusion with the Russians. But you know what? The special counsel law is very specific. And Rosenstein, who is in charge of, he oversees the investigation of Mueller, has said that he gave him broad authority to investigate the Russian collusion. So it started with this. Now, anybody, including Giuliani, who used to be Giuliani is a former United States attorney. I believe he was also in the Southern District of New York. May have been the Southern District of New York, or it may have been in the District of Washington. I'm not 100% sure. I got to look up Giuliani's tenure, but he was a former U.S. attorney. I believe it was Southern District of New York. It doesn't matter. Former U.S. attorney, he knows how this stuff is supposed to go. He knows this. Giuliani is saying that the Mueller investigation, the fruit of it is dead, that there's no Russian collusion. Okay, I'll give you that. May not have been. It doesn't matter. Point is that Rosenstein gave Mueller broad authority to investigate any and everything involving the Russian collusion, and wherever it may lead. And so it led right to the Russians because Manafort got jammed right away with Russian stuff, Ukrainian crap, where he was doing illegal things with money over there in Ukraine, accepting money, blah, blah, blah. Gates along with him. Then turns around, there's 13 Russians who were indicted, but they'll probably never be brought to trial because they're not going to extradite these people from Russia. But that's not even the key reason. The key reason is that it gives Mueller the backing that he needs, the confirmation, if you will, of this whole thing with the Russian thing. So he's got backup for that. Okay. Next, we move on to this whole thing with Flynn, where they said, well, he had these connections and conversations with Kislyak. Now, Jeff Sessions had a problem, but I think that he is okay, because when he was being questioned by Congress and the Senate, rather, when he was being questioned by the Senate about these meetings with this guy Kislyak and all of that, he was saying things like, I can't recall, can't remember, and that's standard legalese for you can't jam me on I did not recall. Now, if he said, I recalled that meeting and I did XYZ, but he did X instead of XYZ, and he lied about it, that's a different situation. But if you said, I do not recall, I do not remember, that's different. And do not recall is standard response to something like that. So Sessions is a smart lawyer. He knows what to say. So I think Sessions doesn't really have a big deal of a problem. And they're not even really probably even looking at Sessions, although they may have been in the beginning. But they're still going to look at Sessions anyway because of the situation with Comey. Oh my God, there's so much going on. I'm trying to keep track of all this stuff. But the problem that Trump has is that he went after Comey first. He went after McCabe. He went after Rosenstein. He went after Sessions. He went after Tillerson. He went after everybody that was in his inner circle. And he's got problems. He's got problems because now the FBI is not whitewashing anything. Come on, folks. Come on. You can't be that slow to not know that sometimes the FBI does whitewash investigations and things. If you want to know, there's this whole big debate about Comey and Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm going to get into that a little bit, but I don't want to get too far into that because I'm getting off the subject matter. But briefly, the whole thing with Cohen and Hillary Clinton was that supposedly Comey was feeling that Hillary Clinton would have won the election anyway, and it wouldn't have made that big of a difference. But Hillary's feeling was that Comey actually cost her the election, which may or may not be true, may or may not be substantiated, but doesn't matter. Point being that what matters was that Comey was looking into it. Comey may have made some missteps. I'm not saying that Comey is the most perfect FBI director or former FBI director, but Comey's a pretty smart dude. Comey took the notes from his meetings with Trump, and he was specifically asked, when you were working for President Bush, did you take notes? He said, no, there was no need. They said, when you worked for President Obama, did you take those notes? He says, no, there was no need. What does that tell you? What does it tell me? It tells me that we're dealing with three different people here. We're dealing with Bush, Obama, and Trump. And in the instances of when they asked him about Obama and Bush, he said no. When they asked him about Trump, he said, I took notes because I had a feeling, and he was dead on accurate when he said, I had a feeling that this was going to be important, or it was going to come back someday, and I needed to make a record of this meeting and take notes. And he was smart for doing that, because Those notes reveal the truth. And so whether you hate Comey, or you even like Comey, or you just mildly like Comey, or you don't care about Comey, and Comey's going to be fine because he wrote a book, I'm telling you, just for the sake of argument, that Comey was a smart dude. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. Moving on. So, because of the fact that Trump maligned these agencies, the FBI, the DOJ, Jeff Sessions, Comey, Rosenstein, McCabe, all these people, what he didn't realize, because he's not a politician, what he didn't realize is that he made a major, major blunder by stepping on their toes and angering them. Then he tried to peddle this nonsense to the American people, and it didn't work. He peddled this nonsense about, well, Comey is hated by the agents. But a week before that, or maybe even a couple weeks before that, the FBI issued a statement and said, oh, Mr. Comey, we love Comey. He was well respected within the FBI. Well respected. Great leader. Had led the agency for years. Before you got there with your nonsense, he was good. Okay. So, in reality, when we look at all of this stuff, it's really annoying because this person has no integrity. Comey and his little pinky right here has more integrity in that little pinky finger than Trump has in his whole body. Comey has more truthfulness in that little pinky finger than he has in his whole body. Comey has more character and honor and moral decency and values and caring and compassion and leadership abilities and leadership qualities in that one little pinky than Trump has in his entire body. And yet people blindly, foolishly, dumbly still support him and his nonsense. Because why? Because we've been duped, people. We've been bamboozled. We've been lied to. We've been manipulated our entire life. Even in the electoral system, we've been duped. Did you know that? In case you didn't know, this electoral college is nonsense. And whether it needs to be scrapped or not, that's for another conversation. But the honest thing is, think about this for a minute. The will of the people is what's supposed to go, right? The will of the people. Okay. What was the will of the people? The will of the people was that Hillary Clinton was supposed to be president of the United States, no doubt. 3,200,000 more people voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. It does not make sense, people, that she was not the president of the United States. But it does make sense because there's floating around this whole thing is a whole lot of corruption and nonsense that goes on that we just aren't totally privy to, but it's there. And it just makes me sick. It literally makes me sick to my stomach. But that's neither here nor there. And honestly, to be honest with you, I'm over this whole election thing as far as Hillary losing. It happened, it's over. She's out of the public life. I don't think she'll ever run for any office ever again. Some people will applaud that, and to them I say, good for you, enjoy, clap your hands as much as you want. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters in that arena, because the reality is that we're still stuck with this. I'm being nice. We're stuck with this person who does not have your best interest in mind and is only concerned about himself. But who cares? Because nobody could have honestly believed him. Can you believe? Okay, I got one more thing to say about that, though. There were some folks that I was talking to, and they said to me, Ted, you know what? Trump made a promise. He's going to invest billions of dollars into the African American community. He's going to rebuild our schools. He's going to make infrastructure. He is going to make America beautiful. Oh, this whole make America great again nonsense. Make America great. And you know that was just some campaign slogan that someone came up with. We all know this. We know this to be true. We know this to be true. But folks, let me be honest. You couldn't have possibly believed that to be true. But even if you did, look at HUD. Look at HUD. HUD is the Department of Housing and Urban Development. He appointed Dr. Ben Carson to lead housing and urban development, a brain surgeon who we were told was actually, when you look up his record as a brain surgeon, he was actually pretty daggone good. He separated conjoined twins. He had a pretty good record as a surgeon. But as a director of housing and urban development, for lack of a better word, he sucks. Sucks bad at the job. Surprising, right? Not really. So he was questioned about, well, Mr. Carson, we've been hearing that there's going to be some budget cuts. We heard somewhere in the neighborhood of $11 billion. Can you give us a figure? He went, well, that sounds about right. And Mr. Carson, no. This doesn't work this way. Listen, we're professionals here. When you come here, we want answers. We don't want this nonsense. Well, what do you mean? We want to know what's the figure. I don't have that. The congressman says, listen, if you don't know, you don't know. Just say so. I would appreciate that answer better than you tap dancing right now, because you're tap dancing right now. So there goes the investment in infrastructure, because housing and urban development affects a lot of African American people. It affects white folks too. It affects a lot of African American people. So there goes your infrastructure. Okay, education. We're going to tackle these one by one, but we're going to get to the bottom of this nonsense. So we switched to education. So this genius billionaire that he appoints named Betsy DeVos, who doesn't have a clue about how to even run an agency, let alone a federal agency with multiple million-dollar budgets or multi-billion-dollar budget and hundreds of thousands of employees, has no idea, no clue. Doesn't know the first thing about public education, never went to a public school, never sent her kids to a public school, never set foot in a public school, because she came from a family of privilege and wealth where she went to exclusive private schools and exclusive private colleges and got degrees from exclusive universities and was never in a public school situation setting, could not even possibly begin to imagine the problems that are involved in a public school system to run the Department of Education. What do you think is going to happen? We're going to get better schools? Don't bet on it. Okay, Secretary of State appoints the former head of ExxonMobil, an oil conglomerate, to run Department of State. Man's in over his head. I don't care. I mean, he had a lot of extensive contacts in the world, but it's a totally different animal. And there were people that was well qualified to run state. Wouldn't point them because they weren't friends. Basically dismantled Department of State single-handedly. Let's move over to Treasury. Steve Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury. Push these tax cuts. It's going to help make America great. Middle class tax cuts. No, 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 folks. Don't even listen to that nonsense. Uh, Someone commented to me a while ago, "Aren't you satisfied with the taking home more money in your paycheck and the tax cuts are going to help you as middle class?" No, 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 no. You know what helped me as a middle class citizen? Bring back my deduction, my full deduction on my mortgage interest. Bring back my deduction for purchase of a new car. I bought a new car a couple years ago and I had to eat the interest. I bought a car in 1987 and I deducted $2,300 in interest from that car. And it helped my tax return. 1987. 88. I believe I bought the car in 1988. I'm telling you. Return the deduction for credit card interest, because according to the congressional people, budget office people, or whatever financial there's a federal financial group, I think it's the congressional budget office, that determined that we as American citizens are carrying more credit card debt than ever. If I was able to deduct that interest, I could pay some of that stuff back, because I could use some of the interest money to pay back the money that I owe. But if I'm constantly paying them the credit card interest and not getting nothing back, I'm getting screwed. Because think about it, even if you had a small $200 bill, which I had a one of my cards only had like a $200 balance on it, and I sent them $200, and I still got a bill the following month for interest, an interest payment, even though I supposedly paid the entire balance off, because interest accrues despite that it's a daily interest accrual. So I'm still stuck. Now imagine if I only paid $10 of that or $20 of that. What would my interest payment be? So that $200 would morph into maybe $300 or $400, depending on how fast I was able to pay it back. So my point is, bring that back and we can get back on our feet as a middle class. But we're not going to be able to do that. But the rich can get a bigger tax cut. It doesn't make sense, people. And we're just being fed this nonsense, because that's the way the system works. All right, that's all I have time for today. We'll get back to this in another conversation, but I wanted to get into that situation with Trump and Cohen, because it's important and it's news and it's current, and it's going to jam some folks up. So we're just going to wait to see what happens, but I guarantee you the FBI is on it, Mueller's on it. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, this has been your main man, Teddy T. Take care, folks. Have a good day now.